road trip movie. Road trip movie. You know, not quite the tone I should probably be talking about this movie for, but I mean, it is a road trip movie. Hey there, cinephiles. Today I'm going to be reviewing Civil War. From A24, and possibly the last movie we'll ever get from Alex Garland, we get a movie about a not so distant future of the United States of America and a very realistic civil war. In this, we're following a group of journalists who are on a mission to Washington, D.C. I won't say any more specifics wise because I think if you're just going into this blind, it'll lead to a great journey. And before I continue my thoughts on the movie itself, I really just want to say if this is truly Alex Garland's last movie, it's certainly a way to go out. To tell the tale of the double-edged sword of journalism, as well as being able to tell that in a not so distant future and very possible dystopian future that is the United States. I mean, it takes some real craft to do so. And all in all, this is something that's going to hit very deep for very many people. I do think that a lot of people aren't going to love it, but at the very least, they'll get something from this movie. And in general, this probably will be a very strong litmus test to see where people lie on the political spectrum. Not that it's necessarily trying to be that. I mean, just look at the alliances that are formed in this movie by the states, and you'll see that it's not necessarily about which political party that you're a part of, but it's just more so about human nature and what you're going to do when you're pushed to the brink that this country has been. What Alex Garland does really well in his direction here is that he's able to turn up the tension so much that it's basically shot for shot, almost realistic to real life and where we're at right now. And I appreciate the fact that he never really tells you the why we got there, but it's more so about how we decide to act as people once we're already pushed our limits and well, a civil war breaks out in the US. Because genuinely to me, that is going to be much more interesting and much more timeless than telling us why this civil war broke out in the first place. For as focused as this movie is, you do get plentiful viewpoints on people who are just living through the war. For people who are so incredibly invested in the war that they go from a place of privilege of not having to partake in the war to being on the front lines to people who can just calmly say that they're staying out of it because it's for the best. And look, this movie isn't quite perfect with its perspectives because for as much as I do enjoy following these journalists and seeing it through their eyes, I would have at least liked to get close enough to one of the soldiers from the seceded states. Because honestly, by the end of the movie, I feel like it would have really benefited just by one more perspective, at least a little bit more. Even if it is relatively simplistic, I think it really would have balanced out the film just a little bit more. And even then, watching the movie, it's not that long, it's under 2 hours. And even so, I felt myself engrossed in the world enough that I would have liked a limited series from this movie. But again, it's about the perspectives, and because you're following these journalists, you're able to navigate so many beats and so many themes pretty well in a pretty short time, which is great, but it also leaves me wanting the film to be shown in a more journalistic way, at least in certain points. And I mean that in the sense of the filmmaking and especially the cinematography. For as beautiful as this movie looks, at points it looks a bit too pretty. I understand the juxtaposition of the extremely vibrant colors and the chromatic kind of outlinings and what they do with the focus. It's really interesting because you have a very limited focal point and so much of the background is blurred, but there's moments when you can tell that they're shooting on a long lens, and it's in that when you feel like you're one of the journalists. I wish they actually showed what the end product is for some of these pictures. And by pictures, I don't mean the actual photos that we see. We do see a lot of that, but I also mean the moving images of truly horrifying and grotesque stuff that unfortunately some of it is happening in our world, and it's not too far-fetched that it could be happening in our country not too long from now. And it's not only the visuals that really sell this horrifying future, but it's also the sound design. The sound design in this, man, that combined with the visuals got my stomach churning so often. Truly one of the most tense movies I have seen in so long. And with this press screening, I was able to see this in IMAX, so it just enhanced everything so much more, which is great. But also, my goodness, I I felt so tense by the end of it. I drove home in silence because I just needed to be calmed down from all of the gunshots. And for as much as I do love the sound, there are some interesting needle drops, and I'll leave it at that. And now for one of the last big positives that I really want to touch on this movie, the acting overall is just so great. Honestly, there wasn't a single bad performance. But real quick note, just like how we barely got Jesse Plemons in Killers of the Flower Moon, it's kind of the same situation here. There's not much of him, but at least he's incredibly memorable. And for as great as the overall cast is, because our core four, all of them are really, really good in this movie, I gotta give major props to Kaylee Spaney. I loved her in Priscilla, I really like her in this, and I am just so excited to see her next project, Alien Romulus. Because genuinely, in this and in Priscilla, you see a wide range of what she can do, and I just continuously want more from her now. I'm such a huge fan, and I probably will watch anything she does now. Especially with how her character is written and her arc, I really, really enjoyed. But with all that being said, I did want to touch on one more kind of negative that I had. For as intense and unnerving as this movie can be, it does take quite a few safe turns. As in, if you know what you're looking for certain things to play out, then you can kind of tell how these big moments will happen. Which is a bit unfortunate because I feel like this is the type of movie that could really take a major swing and leave you all the more devastated by the end. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I left happy at the end of the movie. I mean, I left happy in the sense of quality, but the way that the movie feels, it does weigh on you heavily. It's just, there were certain things that they could have done that wouldn't have made many people happy, but for me, if it would have just taken bigger swings with certain things, this movie would have been just truly stellar. And overall, I mean, for as well made as this movie is and for how much I like it, it's really just a few kind of details that just would have made it not necessarily an all-timer for me, but it would have made it something that I would have recommended to so many people. And I still will. I really like this movie. It's one of my favorites of the year so far. And it ended up being better and much less preachy than I thought it was going to be. But that being said, as I'm watching the movie, expectations kind of started to build because of how good it was, and it didn't quite fully meet the expectations I had as I was watching it during the movie, if that makes sense. But again, it's a movie that is going to be incredibly hard to watch for many people, but it's going to be so worth it, and I know for the majority of people, it's going to seem extremely deep. But I know if you're not an Alex Garland fan, you're gonna say that this isn't quite deep enough. However, I am an Alex Garland fan. I've liked most of his movies. I don't like Men. And this is another one of his that I actually genuinely like. Plus, getting to see this in IMAX, I think might truly be worth the ticket. I give Civil War a 3.5 out of 5 stars. My rating truly was between a 3.5 and a 4 for this. I ended up going a 3.5 because really it's more of a 3.75, like skewing lower. I know that's a bit too much, letting you know my thought process on that, but this is something that should be seen by many people because, well, it's an important movie, not only in the sense of what it's saying and how it's going about it, in the sense of an America that's not too far from now, but also just really gets you thinking on journalism and how, for as great as it is to get people exposed to this stuff, how certain people might forget the point of things. And I just really like that idea that this is touching on how some people can tend to focus on the wrong things in their passion. But all right, those are my thoughts on Civil War. If you've seen it, be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. As always, thank you guys for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Be sure to stay tuned for more Yeti Films content, and I'll watch you later.